Director Vethric stood before the reinforced glass window on the upper level of Omega Terminus prison. His 3 eyes stared down at the human being processed in the chamber below. The creature looked so small compared to the other inmates. So fragile. So breakable. Colonel Tyler Grant. That was the name on the file. The human who had caused so much trouble for the Coalition's high command. The one who found the corruption and exposed it to the entire galaxy. Now he would pay the price. Cell Block Omega, Vethric said. His mandibles clicked together, making a sound like breaking twigs. It was a noise he made when he was pleased with himself. Send him to general population. The processing officer looked up from his screen. His expression showed concern. Sir, the human? I thought he would be placed in protective custody. He is a Coalition officer. A decorated one. And he exposed those corrupt officials. Surely he deserves. I know exactly what he exposed, Vethric interrupted sharply. His voice echoed in the small observation room. And I know exactly who arranged for him to be sent to my facility. The message is clear. This human made powerful enemies. Process him immediately. Cell Block Omega. General population. Those are my orders. The officer swallowed hard and nodded. He knew better than to argue with the director. Everyone knew that Vethric had connections to the very officials the human had exposed. This wasn't about justice. This was about revenge. Within the hour, Tyler Grant stood at the energy barrier entrance to Cell Block Omega. 2 guards flanked him, keeping their distance as if he might suddenly become dangerous. The barrier shimmered like water made of light. Through it he could see movement. Lots of movement. The barrier dropped and Tyler stepped through. The noise hit him like a physical wall. Roars that made his chest vibrate. Clicking sounds that hurt his ears. Hisses that reminded him of steam escaping from broken pipes. Grunting, snarling, and sounds he had no words to describe. Each noise came from a different species, speaking in their own language. It was chaos. Pure chaos. Then the smell reached him. His nose wrinkled. It was a mix of sweat but not human sweat. This was thicker, heavier. There was musk like wet fur mixed with something chemical. And underneath it all, something acidic that made his nostrils burn and his eyes water. Tyler forced himself to look around calmly. He counted quickly. 300 inmates, maybe more. Aliens from every corner of the known galaxy. Krell, Vexian, Drachner, and species he didn't even recognize. They filled every corner of the massive cell block. But not a single human. He was completely alone. Movement caught his eye. A massive figure rose from a bunk in the far corner. Tyler felt his mouth go dry, but he kept his face neutral. The creature was enormous. 9 feet tall, maybe more. Its arms were as thick as tree trunks, with muscles that rippled under gray skin. The skin itself was covered in scars. Deep ones. Old ones. Battle scars. This was a Krell. Tyler had read about them. Warriors by nature. Strong enough to bend steel bars. This particular Krell had a name. Bruthar. Tyler had memorized the basic information about the most dangerous inmates before arriving. Bruthar had 20 confirmed kills. His sentence was life without possibility of release. The entire cell block began to go quiet. The roaring stopped. The clicking faded. Even the constant background noise of 300 prisoners dropped to almost nothing. Every eye in the room turned toward the entrance. Toward the human. Tyler could feel their stares. Predators watching prey. They were sizing him up. Wondering how long he would last. Wondering who would make the first move. He walked slowly to an empty bunk near the middle of the block. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. The thin mattress they had given him felt like paper in his hands. He placed it on the metal frame carefully. Then he sat down. He didn't look away from Bruthar. He didn't show fear on his face. He didn't shake or fidget or do any of the things a scared human might do. He simply sat there and waited. Calm, quiet, patient. In the observation room high above the cell block, guards gathered around their monitors. The screens showed different angles of cell block Omega. All cameras focused on the human now. Credits changed hands. The guards were making bets. How long would the human survive? 1 hour? 2 hours? Surely not until morning. No way this fragile creature would see sunrise. Some guards bet he wouldn't last 30 minutes. Others gave him until the lights went out for sleep time. A few optimistic ones bet he might survive until breakfast if he found a corner to hide in. But most agreed on one thing. The human was dead meat. Bruthar would crush him. Or one of the gangs would tear him apart. Or he would simply break from fear. Director Vethric watched all of this from his private screen. A smile spread across his face. His mandibles clicked again. Satisfied? Please, The human thought he could expose corruption and walk away? The human thought truth and justice mattered? Let him learn what the galaxy really thought of heroes. Let him learn the hard way. By morning, there would be nothing left but a lesson for anyone else who dared to challenge the powerful. Broodhar began walking toward the human. He moved slowly. Not because he was careful but because he was enjoying this moment. The anticipation. The fear he expected to see in the human's eyes. He had all the time in the world. The human looked so small sitting on that bunk. So fragile compared to a Krell warrior. The creature had soft skin that would tear easily. No claws to fight with. No natural armor plating. No scales or thick hide. Just thin, pink skin that bruised if you looked at it wrong. Pathetic. Broodhar cracked his knuckles. The sound echoed through the cell block like stones breaking apart. Crack, crack, crack. Each finger joint popping with enough force to shatter a human bone. He flexed his massive hands, each finger as thick as the human's wrist. Human, Broodhar growled. His voice was deep, rumbling from his chest like distant thunder. He spoke in broken galactic common, the trade language most species used. His accent was thick but understandable. You don't belong here. The human looked up. Tyler Grant met the Krell's eyes without flinching. When he spoke, his voice was completely calm. No shake. No fear. Just steady and clear. You're right, Broodhar. None of us do. Broodhar stopped walking. His massive feet froze mid-step. His eyes narrowed to slits. Something was wrong here. The human wasn't acting right. Prey didn't talk back. Prey didn't use names. You know my name? Broodhar asked. His tone shifted from threatening to confused. I know everyone's name, Tyler said. He stood up from the bunk. Even standing, he barely reached the middle of Bruther's chest. But he didn't seem concerned about the height difference. Broodhar, Clan Ironhide. You were convicted of killing a Vexian debt collector. The one who came to your home and threatened your mate and younglings. You protected your family. The court gave you 20 years for it. You've already served 8 of them. Complete silence fell across cell block Omega. 300 inmates stopped whatever they were doing. The background noise of prison life disappeared completely. Everyone was listening now. Everyone was watching. How did the human know this? Personal information like clan names and family details wasn't in the basic prisoner files. That was deep information. Private information. Tyler turned away from Broodhar. He looked around the cell block, making eye contact with different inmates. Then he pointed to an insectoid creature with a hard shell and multiple arms. Grexith, you're here for 15 years. Theft of government supplies. But those supplies were medical equipment, weren't they? Equipment that was sitting in warehouses, rotting and unused, while your colony was dying from a plague. You stole medicine to save your people. And they locked you up for it. Grexith's antennae twitched rapidly. That was a sign of shock in his species. His mandibles clicked once, twice. He couldn't speak. The human was right. Every word was true. Tyler's gaze moved to a reptilian Drachner with green scales and a long tail. Thorn. 25 years for murder. Except the person you killed wasn't innocent, was he? He was the gang boss who murdered your brother in cold blood. You challenged him in a fair fight. You won. The court called it murder instead of justice. They ignored the self-defense claim because the victim had political connections. Thorn's tail had been swinging back and forth slowly, like a pendulum. It stopped. Completely still. His yellow eyes widened. Nobody knew that story. Nobody cared enough to look into the details. But this human did. Tyler had spent 6 days on the prison transport ship. 6 days locked in a cell while the ship traveled through hyperspace to reach Omega Terminus. During those 6 days he had done something useful. Something that would keep him alive. His neural link. Every coalition officer had one implanted in their brain. It connected them to databases, communication networks, and information systems. When they arrested him, they had disabled the communication functions. But they forgot something important. The neural link could still access files if it was close enough to a terminal. And transport ships had terminals everywhere. Tyler had spent those 6 days pulling every file he could find about Omega Terminus. Guard schedules. Supply manifests. Prison layouts. And most importantly, prisoner records. He memorized hundreds of names. Thousands of details. He read between the lines of official reports and found the real stories. The truth that the coalition didn't want anyone to see. This prison is a dumping ground, Tyler said, his voice carrying across the silent cell block. It's where the coalition sends people they want the galaxy to forget. Political prisoners. Inconvenient witnesses. People who threaten the wrong officials. People who told the truth when lies were more profitable. But I see you. Every single one of you. I know your stories. I know you're more than the crimes they wrote in your files. In the observation room above, the guards shifted uncomfortably. They looked at each other with nervous expressions. This wasn't normal. Prisoners didn't talk like this. They fought. They formed gangs. They established dominance through violence. Sir, one guard said to Director Vethric. The human is talking. Should we intervene? Should we separate him before? Let him talk, Vethric interrupted. His mandibles clicked with annoyance. Words won't save him when Bruthar decides he's done listening. The Krell will tear him apart. Just wait. But Bruthar wasn't tearing anyone apart. The massive warrior stood completely still, frozen. His eyes locked on the small human who somehow knew everything about him. Everything about everyone. How? Bruthar finally asked. His voice was quieter now, almost respectful. How do you know these things? Tyler smiled slightly. Just a small curve of his lips. Because I pay attention, Bruthar. Because I do my homework. And because someone needed to. Someone needed to see all of you as more than numbers and case files. So I did. The first domino had fallen. The largest, most dangerous predator in Cell Block Omega was no longer looking at Tyler Grant as prey. He was looking at him as something else entirely. Something the inmates hadn't seen in a long time. Someone who actually gave a damn. By the third day, something had changed in Cell Block Omega. Something that made the guards nervous. Something that shouldn't have been possible. Sir, you need to see this, a guard said urgently. He pulled up the security feeds on the main monitor in the observation room. Multiple camera angles showed different sections of the cell block. Director Vethric walked over slowly. He looked at the screens and his three eyes widened in disbelief. What he saw made no sense. The inmates were organized. Actually organized. Like a military unit instead of a collection of violent criminals. Bruthar and Thorn sat together at a table. Together. The same two inmates who had gotten into 3 bloody fights in the past month alone. The same two who had to be separated with shock batons and tear gas. Now they were sitting side by side, talking calmly like old friends. The Vexian hive clusters had stopped their territorial displays. For weeks, different Vexian groups had been marking sections of the cell block as their territory. Hissing at anyone who got too close. Fighting over space. Now they moved freely, mixing with each other without any aggression. Even the solitary species were participating in group activities. Creatures that preferred to be alone, that attacked anyone who came near them, were now sitting in circles with others. Talking. Sharing food. Acting like a community. What is he doing? Vethric hissed. His mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. What is the human doing to my prison? What Tyler Grant was doing was something humans had perfected over thousands of years. Something that made humanity dangerous in ways other species didn't understand. He was building a community. Creating connections. Finding common ground between species that had nothing in common except their imprisonment. He had started small. Really small. On the first night, 2 Krell had gotten into an argument over bunk space. Voices were raised. Fists were about to fly. Tyler stepped in between them. He didn't use force. He didn't threaten. He simply explained Krell honor codes to both of them. How their own culture had rules for resolving disputes without violence. The 2 warriors listened. They agreed to follow their own traditions. The fight never happened. The next day, a Vexian tried to communicate with a Drachner but failed miserably. Frustration was building. Tyler sat down with both of them. He taught the Vexian about Drachner body language. How tail movements meant different things. How eye contact was interpreted. Within an hour they were actually understanding each other. During meal times, Tyler started sharing stories. Not just human stories, but tales carefully chosen to resonate with different species. Stories about honor for the Krell. Stories about survival for the Vexian. Stories about family for the Drachner. Each tale had a lesson. Each one built a bridge between cultures. But the real work happened behind the scenes. The strategic work. By day 3, Tyler had formed a council. 1 representative from each major species group in the cell block. They met in a corner during recreation time. To the guards it looked like inmates chatting. But it was so much more. Listen carefully, Tyler said to the council. He kept his voice low. I've been tracking the supply deliveries. Watching the shipments come in. Counting the portions we receive. The food we're getting is 30% below minimum caloric requirements set by the coalition. We're being systematically underfed. Grexitha's antennae twitched. What else? The medications in the infirmary are expired, Tyler continued. Some by months, some by years. 3 inmates have died from preventable illnesses this year alone. Illnesses that could have been cured with proper medicine. We're prisoners, Grexith clicked bitterly. No one cares what happens to us. Tyler shook his head firmly. Wrong. The Galactic Convention cares. Article 7, Section 4. All detained individuals maintain rights to adequate nutrition, medical care, and humane treatment. This facility is violating at least a dozen protocols. Maybe more. Thorne's reptilian eyes gleamed with interest. So what do we do? Riot? Break out? Take hostages? No, Tyler said firmly. The word came out sharp and clear. We do something they won't expect. Something much more effective. We strike. Non-violently. Bruthar leaned forward. His massive frame cast a shadow over the table. Explain, he rumbled. Tyler leaned in closer. We stop cooperating with everything. No work details. No meal lines. No recreation schedules. We refuse to participate in the daily routine. But here's the important part. We don't destroy anything. We don't hurt anyone. We don't give them any excuse to use violence against us. We simply stop. We sit down. We refuse to move. And we document everything they do in response. They'll punish us, someone said nervously. They'll try, Tyler agreed. But think about it. Every punishment they use against peaceful, non-violent resistance will expose them. They'll have to explain why they're beating prisoners who aren't fighting back. Why they're using force against people just sitting quietly. And I've already sent word outside these walls. Coalition inspectors are coming. We just need to hold our position until they arrive. Grexith's antennae stood straight up. How did you send word? They disabled your neural link. Tyler tapped his temple with one finger. A small smile crossed his face. They disabled communication functions. But the neural link still records everything. Video, audio, data. And guards get careless with their data pads. 3 days ago, Guard Mitchell left his pad on a table during shift change. I bumped into him, apologized, and in that 2-second contact, my neural link transferred every piece of evidence I'd gathered. He carried my message to the outside world without knowing it. The inspectors received an anonymous tip yesterday. They're already on their way. The council members stared at Tyler in stunned silence. This small human had outsmarted the entire prison system without anyone noticing. The human, Bruthar said slowly, carefully choosing his words, is terrifying. Tyler shrugged casually. I just understand how systems work. And more importantly, I know how to break them without throwing a single punch. Violence is easy. This is harder. But it works. The plan was set. The revolution would be silent. And it would be unstoppable. The strike began at dawn. The moment the lights in cell block Omega flickered to life, every inmate was already awake. Already in position. Already ready. When the guards arrived for morning work detail, they found something they had never seen before. 300 inmates sat on their bunks. Arms crossed over their chests. Completely silent. Not a single movement. Not a single sound. All right, work detail, the lead guard shouted. His voice echoed through the cell block. Line up at the door. Now. Nobody moved. Not even a twitch. The guard's face turned red with anger. He slammed his shock baton against the metal railing. The clang rang out like a bell. I said get up. This is not a request. This is an order. Still no one moved. 300 pairs of eyes stared forward. Come. Quiet. Resolute. This is defiance, the guard screamed. Spit flew from his mouth. You're all going to solitary confinement. Every last one of you. That's when Bruthar stood up slowly. His massive frame unfolded like a mountain rising from the ground. He didn't approach the guards. He didn't make threatening gestures. He simply stood there and spoke. His deep voice carried across the entire cell block with perfect clarity. Galactic Convention, Article 7, Section 4, Bruthar said calmly. All detained individuals maintain rights to adequate nutrition, medical care, and humane treatment. We demand compliance with minimum standards. The guards looked at each other in confusion. Their expressions showed complete bewilderment. Prisoners didn't talk like this. Prisoners didn't cite legal regulations. Prisoners were supposed to be ignorant, angry, and easy to control. What are you talking about? The guard stammered. Read your own laws, Thorne added from his bunk. We know our rights. We're exercising them. The guards backed away slowly. This was above their pay grade. They needed to report to the director immediately. By day 2, Director Vethric was absolutely furious. His 3 eyes burned with rage as he watched the security feeds. The inmates hadn't moved from their bunks except to use basic facilities. They refused meals, refused recreation, refused everything. Use force. Vethric screamed at his security chief. Break them. I want this stopped now. The security chief hesitated. Sir, they're not being violent. They're not destroying property. They're just sitting there. I don't care. Send in the riot teams. 20 guards entered cell block Omega wearing full riot gear. They carried shock batons, stun weapons, and chemical spray. The inmates remained seated. They didn't run. Didn't hide. Didn't prepare to fight. The first shock baton hit a Drachner in the ribs. He grunted from the pain but didn't fight back. The second hit Grexith across the back. He clicked in pain but stayed seated. The third hit Bruthar in the shoulder. The massive Krell didn't even flinch. The guards moved through the cell block, using their weapons on anyone they could reach. But something strange happened. The inmates took the punishment without resisting. They documented everything with their eyes. Several species in the galaxy had perfect memory. Photographic recall of everything they saw. Every blow was being recorded in living memory. After 30 minutes, the guards stopped. They were breathing hard, sweating. One guard pulled off his helmet and spoke into his comm. Sir, he reported to Vethric. His voice shook slightly. They're not fighting back. They're just taking it. This doesn't look good on the cameras. I don't care about... Vethric started to scream then stopped. His mandibles froze mid-click. Cameras. Everything in the prison was recorded. The coalition inspectors would review all footage. They would see guards beating peaceful prisoners. Pull back, Vethric said quietly. Everyone out. Now. Day 3 arrived with unexpected news. The coalition inspectors had arrived early. Much earlier than scheduled. Someone had sent them evidence. Anonymous evidence that included video recordings, supply manifests, and detailed reports of violations. Inspector Cole walked through cell block Omega with her datapad in hand. She was a stern woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Behind her, 2 assistant inspectors documented everything they saw. She visited the infirmary first. Row after row of expired medications filled the shelves. Some were years past their expiration dates. She scanned each bottle with her datapad. The device beeped repeatedly, flagging violations. Next, the water systems. Contamination levels 30% above acceptable limits. She took samples and ran immediate tests. The results made her expression harden. Then the cafeteria. She weighed the portions being prepared. Each one was significantly smaller than the minimum requirement. She checked the food quality. Substandard. Barely edible. Finally, she entered cell block Omega itself. 300 inmates sat in perfect, disciplined silence. Not rioting. Not violent. Just sitting there with arms crossed. It was the most organized display of peaceful resistance she had ever witnessed. Tyler Grant sat on his bunk among them. He didn't stand out. Didn't call attention to himself. He was just another inmate in the silent protest. Inspector Cole's footsteps echoed as she approached Director Vethric. The director stood near the entrance trying to look confident. Trying to look like he had everything under control. Director Vethric, Inspector Cole said coldly. Her voice could have frozen water. Explain to me why your facility is in violation of 18 separate protocols. Expired medications. Contaminated water. Insufficient food portions. Use of excessive force against non-violent prisoners. Need I continue? It's the human. Vethric sputtered desperately. He pointed toward the cell block. He's causing chaos. He's turned the prisoners against us. He's creating order? Inspector Cole interrupted. She held up her datapad. Security footage played on the screen. I've reviewed the past week of recordings. I see no violence from the prisoners. No property damage. No threats. I see organized, peaceful resistance against documented abuse. What I do see is your guards using force against inmates who weren't fighting back. Vethric's face went pale. His mandibles trembled. Inspector Cole touched her comm badge. Security, this is Inspector Cole. Take Director Vethric into custody immediately. Charges include multiple violations of the Galactic Convention and abuse of authority. 2 coalition security officers appeared within minutes. They placed restraints on Vethric's wrists and led him away. The once powerful director shuffled out of his own prison in handcuffs. As Vethric was escorted past cell block Omega, Tyler Grant finally stood from his bunk. Slowly. Calmly. The guards watching couldn't believe what they were seeing. The most violent beings in the galaxy, creatures that could tear steel apart, all perfectly controlled. All following a coordinated plan. All because of one human who never threw a single punch. 2 weeks later, Tyler Grant stood at the main exit of Omega Terminus Prison. The massive steel doors opened slowly in front of him. Sunlight poured through the gap. Real sunlight. Not the artificial lights of the cell block. He took a deep breath of fresh air and smiled. A free man. All charges dropped. Every single one. His evidence had brought down more than just Director Vethric. The investigation had uncovered an entire network of corruption. 12 prison officials arrested. 23 coalition officers under investigation. The scandal reached all the way to the upper levels of command. People who thought they were untouchable were now facing justice. Inspector Cole walked beside him toward the transport platform. Her boots clicked against the metal walkway. She had been the one to oversee the entire investigation. The one who made sure everything was documented properly. "Colonel Grant," she said, shaking her head slowly. "What you did in there. I've been an inspector for 20 years. I've seen riots. I've seen escapes. I've seen hostage situations. But I've never seen anything like what you did." "I just organized people," Tyler said simply. He shrugged like it was no big deal. Inspector Cole stopped walking. She turned to face him directly. "No. Don't downplay this. You turned a maximum security prison into a disciplined unit. Without weapons. Without any authority. Without rank or position. Just words and strategy. Do you understand how impossible that should have been?" Tyler looked back at the prison. "Humans are social creatures, Inspector. We build communities. We form connections. We organize. Sometimes we do it in the strangest places imaginable. Sometimes we do it when everyone thinks it's impossible." Behind them, large transport vehicles were arriving at the prison. The inmates of Cell Block Omega were being transferred to a reformed facility. A place with proper food, fresh water, real medical care. A place where they would be treated according to the actual laws instead of being forgotten. As Tyler turned to leave, something caught his eye. A figure stood at one of the observation windows high above. Large, unmistakable, Bruthar. The massive Krell warrior stood perfectly still. Then, slowly, he placed his closed fist over his heart. It was a warrior's salute. The highest sign of respect in Krell culture. A gesture reserved for those who had proven themselves in the most difficult battles. Tyler raised his own fist to his chest and returned the salute. The gesture looked small compared to Bruther's massive form. But the meaning was the same. Respect. Honor. Brotherhood. Inspector Cole watched the exchange silently. "He would have killed you on day one," she said quietly. "Now he salutes you. How did you do it?" "I saw him," Tyler said. "Really saw him. Not as a monster. Not as a number in a file. As a person who made a choice to protect his family. Everyone in that cell block had a story. I just took the time to learn them." The transport platform hummed to life. A sleek shuttle descended from the sky, landing smoothly on the pad. Tyler's ride home. Within days, the story spread across the galaxy like wildfire. News networks broadcast it. Military channels discussed it. Even civilian stations talked about nothing else. A human officer had been thrown into the worst prison in Coalition space. Instead of being destroyed, he had organized a peaceful revolution. The Coalition military took notice. Other species took notice. Questions were being asked. Discussions were happening at the highest levels. If one human could do this with no resources and no support, what could humans do with actual backing? On the transport ship heading back to Earth, Tyler sat in the passenger cabin. The stars streaked past the viewport as the ship traveled through hyperspace. His comm unit beeped. Incoming call. The screen showed General Patterson, his commanding officer. Tyler accepted the call. The general's weathered face appeared on the screen. He looked tired, but there was something else in his expression. Pride maybe. Or amusement. "Tyler," General Patterson said, shaking his head slowly. "I send you to testify against corrupt officials. Just testify. Tell the truth and come home. Somehow you start a revolution instead." "Not a revolution, sir," Tyler replied calmly. "I just reminded people they have rights. That laws exist for a reason. That even prisoners deserve basic dignity." General Patterson leaned back in his chair. "The brass is terrified of you now. Do you know that? I sat in a meeting yesterday. 4-star generals and coalition ambassadors. They're all talking about you. Saying humans are more dangerous than they thought. Not because of your weapons or your ships. But because we organize, Tyler finished the sentence. We unite. We build. We find solutions where others only see problems. Exactly, the general said. A slight smile crossed his face. Welcome home, Colonel. Though I suspect this is just the beginning. The galaxy is watching humanity now. Really watching. You've changed something. The comm call ended. Tyler looked out the viewport as Earth came into view. The blue and green planet hung in the darkness of space like a jewel. Oh. He allowed himself a small smile. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for too long. They thought humans were weak because they lacked natural weapons. They thought humans were fragile because they had soft skin. They thought humans were insignificant because they were new to the galactic stage. But Tyler had shown them something important. Something that changed everything. Humans weren't dangerous because they were warriors. They weren't powerful because they were conquerors. Humans were dangerous because they were builders. Because they created order from chaos. Because they formed communities in impossible places. Because they saw people instead of species. Because they organized, united, and stood together even when everything said they should fall apart. And that ability, Tyler thought as Earth grew larger in the viewport, was far more dangerous than any weapon ever created. Because weapons could be taken away. Ships could be destroyed. Technology could fail. But the human ability to build, to connect, to organize? That couldn't be stopped. That couldn't be contained. The galaxy was about to learn that lesson. And it would change everything.